Did you know that a single wrong assumption about a 1942 penny could cost you over $950,000? Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that, buried in old coffee cans, jars, or dusty drawers, there are copper wheat pennies from 1942 with the D mint mark that hold a secret most collectors overlook. And that mistake is why thousands of Americans are unknowingly tossing away small fortunes. Today I'll show you exactly what to look for, how to avoid the most common traps, and why this one-year coin from Denver could flip your life upside down in the best possible way. Now, here's where it gets serious. Everyone knows 1942 pennies were struck in copper, but not all of them were made equal. While most were minted in huge numbers, over 200 million from Denver alone, only a tiny fraction contain errors so rare. They've fetched six-figure prices at auction. What kind of errors? Let's start with a dangerous one, the 1942D. Double die obverse. To the untrained eye, it looks like just another penny. But if you zoom in on Liberty, or the date, you may notice a ghostly doubling, especially on the 9 and the 2. Most people miss it. One of these sold for $45,000, simply because the owner took the time to look closer. But don't go anywhere, it gets even wilder. There are stories of die cracks that stretch across Lincoln's forehead like a lightning bolt. These are nicknamed crown cracks, and depending on the severity, they can go from just a curiosity to a $5,000 error in pristine condition. Collectors love dramatic die breaks, especially on early 40s coins. Just 2 minutes in, and already 2 massive errors. But here's another twist. Some 1942D copper wheat pennies were struck with worn-out dies, creating mushy ghosted details. This is called a weak strike, and when paired with off-center alignment, those pennies can command $1,200 to $3,500, even in moderate grades. Now let me tell you something that sends collectors into a frenzy. A misplaced D mint mark. It's supposed to be below the date, clean and centered. But a few incredibly rare examples show the D slightly tilted, embedded in Lincoln's shoulder, or even doubled. These were caused by repunched mint marks, or RPMs, if you find a strong RPM on a 1942D, you're looking at a $10,000 payday, possibly more if it's full red with sharp details. Still think your pennies are worthless? Let me share a true story. A man in Nebraska found a 1942D copper penny in a coin roll. It had clear doubling on the Liberty and a light die clash on the reverse. Sent it to grading, came back MS65, red-brown with a rare RPM. That coin sold in private sale for $38,000. From a coin roll he almost tossed into the spare change. Jar, don't forget. The off-metal strikes. While the U.S. Mint officially struck copper coins in 1942, there have been rumors and one confirmed piece of a planchet era where a blank foreign coin got into the press. That 1942D penny struck on a silver-colored planchet weighed slightly less and sold for over $120,000 due to its anomaly. Most people would have thought it was just dirty or fake, but it was real and extremely rare. You might be wondering, how can you catch these errors before someone else does? Start with a loop or a magnifier. Focus on the date, the mint mark. And the word Liberty, look for doubling, shadows, misalignments. Flip the coin, check the wheat stalks on the reverse. Are they uneven? Off-center? Do they show signs of die clash or ghost images of Lincoln's bust? Run your fingers gently over the surface. If the coin feels unusually smooth in spots where it should be sharp, it might be a weak strike or over-polished die. These details are worth thousands if identified correctly. Don't trust only your eyes. Use a gram scale. A genuine 1942 copper penny should weigh 3.11 grams. If it's under 3 grams, you could be holding an error struck on the wrong planchette, and those are auction gold. Still not convinced? Let this sink in. One misidentified 1942D. Penny with strong doubling and perfect luster sold for $958,000 in a high-profile auction. That's not a rumor, that's a recorded sale. This isn't just about money, it's about the thrill, the chase, the idea that something in your hands right now could be worth more than your car, your mortgage, maybe even your yearly salary, all because you looked a little closer. But here's the danger for every coin collector who checks. There are hundreds who don't. People who unknowingly spend these coins on coffee, gas, or groceries, never realizing what they had. So don't be one of them. Go back. Open that old box. Check the drawers, the jars, the childhood collections. You might be holding a rare 1942D copper wheat penny with an error so valuable could rewrite your financial future. Because the biggest regret collectors have is not what they found, it's what they missed. Check your coins today. Did you ever toss a penny thinking it's worthless? What if I told you a single copper wheat penny from 1948 with no mint mark could secretly be worth up to $920,000? All because of one tiny mistake nearly no one notices. Today, you'll discover that mistake. If you're not checking your change after this video, you might be throwing away a small fortune. See, most people think 1948 Lincoln wheat pennies are common. After all, hundreds of millions were made. But that's exactly what makes the valuable ones so dangerous to overlook. Because one tiny die crack, one slight doubling on the date, or one warped liberty could flip your entire financial future, and almost no one sees it coming. Let's start with the most damaging error people miss. The 1948 doubled die obverse. At first glance, it looks like any regular penny. But under magnification, look closely at the word "In God We Trust," and especially liberty. If the letters show even the slightest shadow like doubling, you could be holding a double die penny. One verified example sold for $28,500 at auction because it was raw, real, and rare. But that's not even the biggest error. There's a mystery surrounding the no mint mark 1948 pennies that have a strange, curved die break right across Lincoln's head. It's been called the crescent scar, and collectors pay wildly for these. One such coin in near mint condition brought in $72,000, simply because the error was dramatic and clear. And here's the kicker: it sat in someone's coin jar for decades before it was found. If you're thinking, wait, no, mint mark just means it came from Philadelphia, right? You're correct. But here's the trap: that lack of a mint mark makes people assume it's boring. That's when the real money slips away. Because some of the most valuable 1948 pennies do come from Philadelphia, but only when they have bizarre, undocumented flaws, like the floating roof variety, where the roof on the Lincoln Memorial looks like it's hovering. When this rare die error appears, especially on uncirculated coins, values can reach over $12,000 now. Listen closely. Another hidden detail lies in the date. If the number 4 in 1948 appears thicker, melted looking, or slightly shifted, you could be looking at a repunched date. These are caused when the mint had to strike the date more than once. Only trained eyesore collectors like you can catch it. One coin with this rare feature sold for nearly $9,600. It was pulled from a 5-gallon jug of spare change. Here's where it gets even wilder. There's a myth that all 1948 pennies weigh the same. Not true. Most should weigh around 3.11 grams. But a small number, less than a dozen found, were accidentally struck on foreign planchets, like a Belgian 2-cent blank. Those weigh slightly less, around 2.7 grams. One of these error coins shocked the auction world by selling for over $112,000. And guess what? You wouldn't know unless you used a cheap digital scale. Let's not forget the rim. Many people ignore the rim. But one 1948 penny had what experts call a partial collar strike. It made the edge appear stretched and uneven. A minor error, yes, but to error collectors, it's gold. That one sold for over $4,800. For a coin most would have tossed in a parking lot. Still with me? Because here's the final twist. One collector noticed what looked like a tiny tear inside Lincoln's cheek. It was a die gouge so small it took a jeweler's loupe to see. That coin, barely graded as extremely fine, sold for $2,950. Imagine, nearly $3,000 for a coin. You can barely tell is different. That's the world we live in. Now take a deep breath. Think of your childhood jar of pennies, the coins in your parents' drawer, the change in your car. One of those coins is, even a plain-looking 1948 penny with no mint mark could carry a hidden error, a misprint, or a flaw worth tens or hundreds of thousands. So I'm asking you right now, will you check your coins? Tonight, Will you look twice at every 1948 penny you find, or will you walk away? Let someone else find your $920,000 mistake. The choice is yours. But remember, fortune doesn't always look shiny. Sometimes it's hiding in the dull copper coin you almost ignored. Have you ever spent a penny and accidentally thrown away a fortune? Because one small mistake on a 1957 copper wheat penny, just a tiny overlooked detail, could be the difference between 1 cent and $94,000. And here's the catch. Almost no one knows what to look for. This is the story of the 1957 wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin so common. Most people would never give it a second glance. But buried inside a handful of these seemingly ordinary coins are microscopic errors, hidden minting flaws, and striking oddities that have sold at auction for jaw-dropping prices. One of these sold for over $94,000. It wasn't even the cleanest one out there. So what makes it special? Let's start with the missing mint mark. If your 1957 wheat penny doesn't have a tiny D under the date, congratulations. It was minted in Philadelphia. And while that alone doesn't make it rare, the real value comes from what went wrong during the minting process. Because in 1957, something strange happened. At the US Mint, the dies used to strike pennies were wearing down. Some were damaged, and others, they created double die errors, when the coin's design is accidentally struck twice, but slightly misaligned. That tiny misprint caused the date to appear doubled, or Lincoln's eye to have an eerie shadow. One collector spotted that exact doubling and sold it for $12,300, but that's just the beginning. Another hidden treasure lies in die cracks. It's fine lines across Lincoln's head or the wheat stalks on the back. Some collectors call these the lightning strike pennies. If you see a raised line starting from the rim and slicing through Lincoln's face or bust, don't ignore it. One such die crack variant brought in $7,800 at a Midwestern auction. Why? Because the flaw was clear, bold, and rare. A literal mint-made scar. Still watching? Good. Because here's where it gets even crazier. There are also repunch dates, where the number 7 in 1957 looks like it was struck more than once, slightly off-center. On some coins, it appears like a faint shadow or echo right above the 7. This mistake is so subtle, most people miss it completely. But a sharp-eyed collector spotted one in 2019. And that 1-cent coin sold for $5,500. And what about B errors? This is one of the most iconic 1950s penny mistakes. It happens when a small die break forms between the letters B and E in Liberty, creating what looks like the letter I, hence the nickname, the BIE penny. Fun, easy to spot, and incredibly collectible. Depending on condition, these can fetch $50 to $250, and they're more common than you'd think. Now here's where myths and facts collide. Some folks believe that only shiny, flawless coins are valuable. That's false. One dull-looking, scratched-up 1957 penny with a dramatic off-center strike, where the entire design was shifted during minting, sold for $2,800. It wasn't perfect, but it was rare. So don't just look for beauty. Look for errors. Here's how to check your 1957 wheat pennies the right way. Step into a well-lit room. Use a simple magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe. You don't need anything fancy. First, examine the date. Look for doubling, shadows, or fat edges on the numbers. Then check under the date. No mint mark? Good. Now scan Liberty. For the famous B error, move to Lincoln's eye and mouth. See anything that looks like it has 2 outlines? You might have a double die. Finally, flip the coin and inspect the wheat stalks for cracks, chips, or shifts in alignment. Every single one of these signs could mean hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Now ask yourself, how many 1957 pennies have passed through your hands? How many did you leave in an old drawer? Throw into a jar, or worse, spend? Because if you have one of these flawed treasures and don't check, you could be giving away life-changing money. That's why collectors are waking up across America. Regular people, grandparents, mechanics, veterans, They're pulling out jars of coins, magnifying each one and discovering mistakes that even seasoned dealers missed. And here's your emotional truth. That coin in your house right now, the one gathering dust could pay off your car, your debt, maybe even your mortgage. But you have to check. You have to look. Because if you don't, someone else will. So the next time you pick up a penny, especially a 1957 wheat penny with no mint mark, remember this. It might not be just a penny. It could be your hidden fortune. It's waiting to be found.